Heidi Ho neighbors, Rado Goji here, and welcome to Squeeze the World Toys. Now, today I was going to be doing a video on the Power of the Primes Deluxe Class Punch Counterpunch, but Amazon messed everything up and still hasn't sent me mine yet, so we're going to be going for my next video idea, although it is one that I do particularly like, so either way it's win-win, I suppose. Anyway, today we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Generations Combiner Wars Computron box set. Computron is a combiner, obviously with Combiner Wars, even though there were some non-combiners in the line, but that's neither here nor there. But he is a combiner that is made up of a combiner group known as the Technobots, who were introduced in the G1 show about mid to late third season. The 5 Technobots in question are Scattershot, Afterburner, Strafe, Lightspeed, and Nosecone. You may recognize some of these figures if you've seen either of my 10 Shots, 10 Bots themed episodes. All but Scattershot and Strafe have shown up on camera in that way, but we're doing proper reviews of them now, so I'm not going to be blathering on like an idiot. At least no more than I do when I'm drunk. Anyway, now with Combiner Wars, they did take a few more liberties with the Combiner teams, and usually they did add in additional honorary members to the teams through Legend class figures. So we do have additional figures in the form of Scrounge, as well as Cybax, who I'll get to much later on. But the Technobots themselves in the show made their debut, like I said, about midway through, a little bit, maybe a little bit toward the end of Season 3, which was, well, mostly towards the end of the show. But either way, they were created by Grimlock, of all characters, who was given advanced temporary intelligence, and used that intelligence as well as some parts from Unicron's head to create the Technobots here. Yes, that was a thing that happened in the show. But yeah, something I should also mention about the Combiner teams in Combiner Wars is the class of figure we have here. Now, each of these Combiner teams will have a Voyager class, in this case Scattershot, who represents their leader. Because each of these Combiner teams are of the Scramble City variety, I'm not going to talk about where the origins of that name come from, but you'll have one guy who forms the torso and head, and then all of the other 4 will form limbs. Although each of the limbs, or each of the figures that make the limbs, actually have both an arm mode and a leg mode that you can use, and you can actually put the combinations in any particular way that you want. Although there are canon configurations within the show, which we'll be looking at today. But in our case, or at least in the case of the Combiner Wars lines, the Voyager class characters would make up the torso or the head. So Scattershot, being the leader, is the Voyager class, and the other 4 are all Deluxe classes, which will make up the limbs. The honorary added members, like Scrounge here, are Legends class, as I mentioned, and Cybax is kind of a special case with this particular box set that I'll get into later. So without further ado, let's take a look at each figure individually and see how they are. Now, the first of the figures we're going to take an in-depth look at is going to be the Voyager class Scattershot. Scattershot actually was part of the main Combiner Wars line, and much like all of the other Voyager class aerial-themed robots, figures, whatever, was a retool of Silverbolt, the leader of the aerial bots. There was also a Cyclonus figure, which was also a retool of Silverbolt, which was kind of weird. But this is recolored from that main version, that main entry in the line, to be more along the lines of the G1 toys. And also, before I go any further, I did actually forget to mention this a little bit earlier, but all of these figures have been customized with repro labels from ToyHacks.com. I don't want to misrepresent that. The detail, if you do pick this up, the detail on this right out of the box is going to be different than what you see here. So I just made them a little bit spiffier, and they do look a lot better. So if you do pick this up, I do recommend going and getting the stickers for it as well, because they're a lot of fun to apply, and they look amazing when they're done. Anyway, back to the toy. So oddly enough, Scattershot was in the main line for Combiner Wars, but none of the other ones were. They didn't have like a full Technobot team like they had like all the Protectobots and all the Stunticons and the Combaticons and the Aerial Bots. The Technobots, they just had Scattershot. I don't know if they were planning on making the others available later on, but unfortunately they're only available in this box set. Or unfortunately or fortunately? I don't know. I guess it depends on how you look at it. But either way, again, looks very much, while it is the same mold that was used in the main line entry, it does have a paint scheme that more invokes the G1 toy. He does have a little landing gear here that can be moved up and down. This is kind of just to complement the kind of the molded in fake wheels that are back here and allow him to just kind of sit straight. I mean, it'll sit straight without it, because you can just put it up and it still sits fine, but I don't know, maybe they just wanted a little bit more support there. He does have a couple of accessories to go with him, and that's this little shield gun thing and a longer rifle. These can also combine together to make an even longer rifle, which is mainly used for Computron. But these can be combined with the vehicle mode, and they even complement the landing gear that's already there. As you can see on the bottom of the shield gun here, there is a fake wheel there. So all you got to do is just take the posts and put them into the holes here. And sometimes it can take a bit for you to line them up properly, but once you do, it's a lot more stable to sit them down. And it looks like 100% better this way, I think, because now he's got a couple of gun barrels on the front there, which actually I did forget to mention his character and personality. That is one thing I wanted to mention earlier. He is kind of a bit of a marksman, so he does have a lot of guns on him. But he's also very impulsive. He doesn't think before he acts. But he is, I believe, the smartest one of the team. And that's kind of important, because the Technobot's main thing, other than being retro-futuristic-looking vehicles, were also meant to be very, very smart. So you do have a super smart leader, but he also does, just kind of acts before he thinks. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the transformation into robot mode. We're going to start off by removing the gun we just put onto him, because we're not going to do well with that here. It can be a bit of a pain in the butt to take back off, but the landing gear coming out does kind of help with that. So we're just going to put that off to the side here. So the tail section, we're going to flip the top tail fin in either direction. It doesn't really matter which. The nose section is going to come up and back, just kind of rest like that, and then the wings will untab from the fuselage and swing up and just kind of like rest back there as well. In fact, there are actually notches that the fins here will kind of just rest into, and everything will just kind of fall into position. There's no clipping or anything there. That's just how it's meant to look there. And this is basically all just kind of a spaceship backpack, because if you look at the bottom, you can obviously tell that there's a robot there. So we're going to just take the arms, bring them up to kind of get them out of the way. The legs will come down like this and twist into place. The feet will flip out from the back, but usually to get it started, I do kind of push in on the hinge there, just to kind of give myself some clearance to grab at it. And the heel will also flip out thusly, and there's also a little panel that I like to close. Just do the same thing with the other leg, very simple. And then just kind of bring the arms back down and rotate them into place. And then the chest is going to open up thusly. Flip out the head. I know my hand was covering that a lot, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Just put the chest back into place. And here we have Scattershot in his robot mode. The articulation is... I know I say this a lot on this show, but it's pretty much what you'd expect. You got your, your thigh swivels, your knees, your elbows. You can ratchet them out. You can ratchet them forward and back. No wrist movement though, but that's just because of how the these panels are kind of molded. And of course, you do have a ball joint for the head. And we also do have the aforementioned accessories. Not only can he hold these in his hands, but he also has holes on the forearms here that you can plug them into. And I usually like to do it that way because, much like with Starscream and his null rays on his forearm mounted null rays, I do find that the weapons are usually quite a bit cooler if you put them onto the arms like that. So that's Scattershot. Overall, pretty cool. Yes, we're going to go ahead and put him off to the side while we bring all of his friends out to play as well. And we're going to continue on with possibly my favorite of the Technobots, and that is Afterburner, or Afterbreaker, as he's known with the set. Sometimes Hasbro does have some issues getting the license to use certain names. Afterburner, in this particular case, was one of them, so rather than just kind of slap Technobot or Autobot in front of the name, they just decided to change the name for this particular particular figure to Afterbreaker. I will still be calling him Afterburner, though, because that's his name. Anyway, Afterburner is the angry boy of the group. He's very argumentative, very unpleasant, I guess. He's very angry all the time, and that's just his main characteristic. The main reason I like Afterburner so much is, well, okay, there is the whole orange thing going on. If you know me by now, you know that orange is my favorite color. And he's even more orange on the original toy, which was a more sleeker, more futuristic-looking motorcycle. But considering that Combiner Wars mainly retooled like the same mold over and over again, the only mold that they used for motorcycles in that line was the Special Edition Deluxe Class Groove of the Protectobot. So all of the motorcycles, and even later on, like with Wreck-Gar, there was a deluxe class Wreck-Gar that came out with Power of the Primes, all used that particular motorcycle look to it. And it isn't a bad motorcycle look, I don't think. But I do like the original G1 a little bit better. One thing that I do also like that a lot of people don't seem to agree with me on, or at least from what I've observed, I know I've seen a lot of complaints about it. I haven't personally talked to anybody about this. I'm not part of a community or anything. But I actually really like this green windshield here. A lot of people did complain that this wasn't blue and was green instead. I do know that the Takara version of this, the Takara versions of these were more painted toward cartoon accuracy rather than the accuracy of the original toys, but that did have a light blue windshield there. Also, the instructions actually have, because this actually pegs into a hole, actually kind of have it like this. And I don't like to do that. I do like to use that peg and hole there because it evokes more of the sleekness that I associate Afterburner with. So let's go ahead and transform him real quick. First off, we're going to take these guns / tailpipes off of him. Then we're going to detach this sort of seat area. Actually, we're gonna open this up real quick. Then detach. And then we're going to basically bring the legs out. And then we're going to close them back up. But make sure, because there are these little tabs with slots there that need to line up in order for it to be able to close up properly and everything. Some of the joints can be kind of stiff, so sometimes, not always, it can take a bit to get everything into its proper spot. And then just go ahead and separate the legs like this, and then the two halves of the wheels are going to rotate out to the outside of the legs. Just on a side note as well, if you're transforming him back into the motorcycle, these wheels can be a pain in the butt to realign. As you can see, there's these little kind of spacers on the inside, and if they're lined up properly, they'll just kind of make like a circle of their own, but if they're not in proper alignment, then the wheel will look kind of split and uneven and icky, and it can be, again, a pain in the butt to get where it needs to be. Then just take the entire leg section, that's going to twist 180 degrees, unpeg the windshield if you don't have it that way already. Then just kind of bring that up. We're going to take the entire front wheel section. This is going to unpeg like so, and then come back. And then the instructions also say to twist it 180 degrees like that. The obvious arms are then going to come up. Thusly, we're going to bring them out like this, and then they're going to ratchet down and out like so. And then just kind of twist the arms into place, and then twist the head around to reveal said head. And here we have Afterburner in his robot mode. Afterburner is really, really cool. He is the only figure in the set that has light piping in his eyes. So I don't know if it comes up on the camera very well, but you can shine light through that green bit on his back and on the back of his head and make his eyes glow green. Now, if I did have one complaint about the way that the instructions have him set up, it is this big old bleh on the back. It's just kind of hanging off there, and it looks dumb. Now, there are a couple of ways that I usually go around doing this. One thing I like to do, and I do this most of the time, is I bring it up a little bit more and close it up like this. So you still have that cool sort of windscreen behind his head, which I really, really do legitimately like. And you don't have it hanging off the back like an eyesore. You can, it's more compact and it makes a bit more sense. Or if you're looking for more G1 accuracy, you can actually just keep this flipped around like this and sort of position it like this. Now, this isn't entirely G1 accurate. Obviously, the wheel is over his head rather than just kind of being behind his head. But then, if you do it more like that, then again you have the sort of hanging off the back, which that I don't particularly like. Either way, I think this looks the best of any of those, just for the compactness factor of that. And, of course, those tailpipes he had before are guns, so just go ahead and put them in his hands, and he's got guns. Very cool looking guns. Not as cool as the G1 version of the guns, but or the original G1 version, but that's okay. So that's Afterburner. So let's go on to the next member of the crew here, who is Strafe. Strafe, as you can see, turns into this sort of spaceship jet, kind of like Scattershot, except a bit smaller, more jet-like than big spaceship-like, I guess you could say. Strafe's personality is hard to put into words, at least from what I've seen. Like, he has kind of he doesn't have a split personality or anything like that, but he's like, how do I word this? Like, he's fine 1 minute, and then, like, something will just trigger, and then he'll just go crazy, just, like, shooting everything in his path. And, kind of a weird thing to have going on there, but even harder to put into words. I'll just leave it at that. Strafe's mold is based off of the Aerialbot Air Raid, and The main thing that they changed, obviously, was the front here. Obviously, since he's not an actual jet anymore, he doesn't have, like, the regular nose cone. Instead, he has, like, these big old guns that are shooting forward, which is pretty cool. I do like the look overall, though. It is very nice and compact, and it's also pretty fun to transform as well. So, to do that, we're going to open up the legs, much like we did with Afterburner. And these are going to get on camera better, and then, but like before, like the legs just kind of come out of the space inside the what was there. Just kind of line these up properly so that tabs will go into slots and all that. Bring these wings backwards. Separate the legs. The arms will come up like this. And then this whole back section comes back like this, and then up, and then we'll kind of peg in there, and then just twist the head around. And there we have Strafe. Now, I don't have any problems with Strafe in general. It's a pretty good figure, fun to transform, has the same articulation as everyone else. Overall, he's pretty good. The only flaw he has right now is the sticker I put on down here. Kind of got crinkled up when he was placed into a combiner joint incorrectly. Well, it was aligned. The sticker was aligned incorrectly, and it got crinkled up. But that's okay. The main thing that irks me about Strafe, though, is that he doesn't have any guns or accessories that go with him. In the show, these guns could, and I believe on the original G1 toy, these guns could disconnect and he could hold them in his hands. They don't do that on this. They're actually molded on, and they're just part of this part of the figure. You can't detach them at all, so that is a bummer. But still, Strafe is a good enough figure on his own. So who needs accessories? Strafe does, because he's the only one that doesn't have one. Now, I know that I said that Afterburner was my favorite of the Technobots, but as far as, and I would go so far to say so far that Afterburner is also my favorite mold of the Technobots, but there is at least one other member that has a mold, that has a mold at the very least, that does give Afterburners a run for his money. And that is Lightspeed, or Lightsteed, as he's known here, because, again, licensing issues with the names, although Lightsteed is a decidedly stupid name. Either way, Lightspeed turns into a futuristic-looking car, a little bit more futuristic in the show and whatnot. At the very least, the stickers I put on do make it look more futuristic than the original detailing on the figure does, but either way, yes. Lightspeed seems to be the most emotionally stable of any of the Technobots, but his major character flaw is that he daydreams a lot. He dreams about going into space, even though he was created at a point in time where the Transformers went to space like every other episode, so I don't know what he's on about there. Heck, he was created in space. He was created using parts from Unicron's head, which is just floating somewhere out there in space. So, yeah. Either way. The mold is looks like more based off of Streetwise from the Protectobots, although ultimately even Streetwise's mold was a retooling of the Stunticon Dead End. And most of the cars in Combiner Wars use the Dead End mold. And a lot of people complain about that because you have so many Dead End retools. I didn't complain because, quite frankly, I found out about a lot of this stuff, including this particular set, much later than everyone else did. Like, by the time I got Computron, Power of the Primes was just coming out, so that was, earlier this year. But either way, this is the only Dead End mold that I have, so I don't have a problem with this. And besides, transforming it is just a delight. So let's go ahead and do so. I guess because the only real thing that he can do on his own is he has wheels that roll, like any car toy does. Anyway, let's go ahead and start transforming. So you take the rear wheel sections; these will fold up like that, and then bring the back section down. And then again, we're going to start aligning legs. These come apart. The legs will separate a little bit easier than the others. That's fine. These little slots here have kind of tabs on the inside. I know that doesn't show up on camera very well because of the lighting, but basically just got to kind of align the tabs in the slots that way in order for you to, well, have them properly aligned. That's all there really is to it. Then we're going to basically push down on the top of the hood to bring up the windshield, and this is going to swing down thusly. Let's bring it around to the underside of the car. This is a chest plate that comes down to reveal the head. The front of the car is going to come off and just kind of hinge down like this. The arms come up, much like Strafe's did. And you can also bring out the hands and engage the elbows to make them look more like arms. And then the legs have enough clearance now, or I say enough clearance because you can do this earlier as well, but a good amount of clearance at the very least to bring the legs around front. So now we have light speed in his robot mode. And like I said, I really, really like transforming this. This is probably, like I said, again, while Afterburner is my favorite character in the group, this is my favorite mold, my favorite figure of this particular box set. It is fantastic. And again, I can understand people complaining about the dead end mold constantly being used because they have, like, 50 million dead end molds that were hard to use. But considering this is my only one, I can look at it objectively and say, yeah, this is a darn good model. And I like it a lot. Lightspeed also does have a gun. He has this triple-barreled shotgun deal. Now, there really isn't any place that you can store it on the car mode and have it look good. Like, you can store it, like, on the top of the hood, or on top of the, not the top of the hood, on top of the car itself. Because there is a, let me just show you, there's a hole right there you can put it. But I don't do that, because it looks dumb that way. Not that I really store these guys in vehicle mode, or even robot mode anyway. They're normally stored in the combined form. But, yeah, he does have a little shotgun that he can hold. So that's pretty cool. So let's move on to the last of the original 5 Technobots with Deluxe Class Nose Cone. Nose Cone's personality is that he is a perfectionist, and that he may take a good long while to enact what he needs to enact and get that into motion, but as long as it's done perfectly, he doesn't care. He turns into a drill tank, as you can see, and the mold is based off of the Combaticon Brawl, because that's the only tank mold that they used in Combiner Wars. Also, Brawl actually had this end of the tank as the front, whereas officially, this is the front of the tank for Nose Cone. And I do see a lot of people like to display Nose Cone with this being the front. I personally think it looks better with this as the front, because if the drill is here, let me put the drill on the front, because the drill can detach, and you can actually put it on the front if you want to. Like so. In fact, we are going to be putting it here later for reasons. You have this, I mean, it looks cooler this way, I suppose, but you also do have, like, whatever he's drilling into, before it reaches the end of the drill, it's going to hit the front of the tank. Whereas if it's positioned more this way, all of this is flat, and there's nothing getting in the way of the drill. So there you go. I'm justifying that. I already do kind of have a complaint with how he's presented here, though, mainly due to his color scheme. All of the other Technobots, they're mostly white and red with a little bit of orange, a little bit of maroon. They do share a lot of the colors, between them. But Nose Cone is like brown and yellow, and neither of the others share this color scheme with him. And he really stands out compared to the others as a result, but he doesn't look very good in comparison as a result. But either way, he does have wheels on the bottom that allow him to wheel around, as you would expect. The drill doesn't turn or anything like that, just like a solid piece. Yeah, let's go ahead and transform him into his robot form. So, first off, we're going to disconnect the drill and put it off to the side real quick. We're going to move the turret a little bit forward just to kind of get it out of the way. And then we're going to take the back section. This is going to be the legs. Just going to kind of wiggle it away from the other parts. And then the legs are supposed to come out, down, and then back in. They've kind of got a similar sort of like notch sort of system here. Like there's a notch here in the knee, and then there's like the lip of the mold there will slide into that thusly. And sometimes these can be a pain in the butt. I know when I was rehearsing this, it took me some doing to get the legs out and back, but it actually seemed to cooperate this time, which is good. So then this whole section will come down, although you can also move ahead, just take the front treads and bring them out and up, just to kind of give this more clearance to come down. And also this will swivel and kind of accordion and softly click into place thusly. Then we're going to take the turret part, we're going to actually move it again, and this time it's going to peg into the back. The front treads are going to come down like this, fold out the arms, and then the head is right there. It just kind of folds up. You can also unpeg the turret, get it out of the way. And there we go. And that is Nosecone in his robot mode. He also has his trusty drill, which you can either let him hold or put into the holes on his forearms. Now, I do know that a lot of people don't particularly like this tank mold because of the glaring issue of the stomach area. When the original Brawl figures were out, because this is a remold of that, they did have the same sort of situation here, except this didn't click in properly. Like I said, this does have a click to it. I mean, it's not a very audible one, but it does settle into place very nicely, and it does hold, and he is very stable. Although there are a lot of people who don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way it looks particularly, but it does the job. The problem was that the older Brawl figures, this didn't click in properly, and it would often flop around more. Now, what a lot of people like to do is they like to take out this combiner joint a bit, and that's kind of like what was going on with the stickers here for the repro labels. You can pop it out a bit like that, and it kind of does cover it up a bit, but the downside is if you take it out too much, like if we're at like a point where it does look better like this, yes, but it doesn't click into place properly. So I normally don't do that. I mean, either way, this is my least favorite mold of the bunch. It's my least favorite figure of the bunch, probably. I mean, Nosecone is a drill tank, and drill tanks are cool, but at the same time, his color scheme meshes with the others, and the mold, even if I do say that it does the job, it still isn't very good. It's still not a well-engineered bit in the middle there, and it looks kind of awkward depending on what angle you look at him with. That doesn't necessarily mean I hate it, it's just I don't like it as much as the others. Now, those are the 5 normal Technobots, the classic Technobots that we all know and love, or at least I do. But again, we do have some guest characters here, and the first of them is Scrounge. Scrounge is a character who was only like in 2 panels of one of the older comics, I believe. He really didn't do anything except for roll around and die, I think. We really didn't get to see him as a good alt mode either. He was kind of like this wheel of junk with his head in the middle. And I guess that's why they went ahead when they decided to use Scrounge as a character for this. That's probably why they used the Cosmos mold for that. But Scrounge is still a character that does get some love. He does have a lot of background cameo appearances in some of the newer IDW comics, as far as I've seen. I mean, I haven't read the comics myself, and I know that they're coming to an end now, but I have seen, pictures and such of Scrounge sitting in the background of some shots and whatnot. But like I said before, he is based off the Cosmos mold, possibly to evoke his normal, wheel sort of alt mode, because Cosmos is a flying saucer, you see. Initially the main problem I had with this was the color choice here. I know it really doesn't look as blindingly fluorescent on camera, at least it doesn't through the viewfinder here, but the color is loud and annoying on this. It's mostly this really blinding fluorescent yellow with some red detailing on there. So I do like the fact that there are stickers on that now that break that up, the cool little silver around there. But as much as I don't like the color, this is a lot more like Lightspeed in the fact that it's so much fun to transform. Lightspeed is probably still my favorite, but this is a close second in how it transforms. So the first thing you do is you take these side front sections and you pull them out like so. And then basically everything just kind of moves into place. These will straighten up to make legs. Weird looking legs, yes, but legs nonetheless. Just kind of rotate them like this. And then this whole section is going to come down and clip into the bottom. And then you just twist the entire thing 180 degrees to get the legs in place. This little back panel with the fin will pop up to unlock the arms, and the arm sections will come up like this. Then you can put that back down to kind of make a backpack, and then the arms will unfold thusly. And then the head will pop up from the center section here. And there we have our Legends class Scrounge figure here. And again, while I'm not a big fan of the design, the transformation makes up for everything pretty much. Anything that I don't like about it, don't care, transforms really well. It's smooth, everything just falls into place. But basically it's just Cosmos with Scrounge's signature head on there. That's really all there is to it. All of the joints are ball joints, so you can get them into a good number of poses and whatnot there. But that's not all. As you might recall from the beginning of the video, we do have another special visitor figure, guest character, guest star here, and that is Cybax. Cybax is the same color plastic as Scrounge, and in fact, without the repro labels on here, this would be all just like solid yellow with a little bit of red on the cockpit, and I think on his face in robot mode. But the stickers do a great job of breaking that up, and we have this awesome red, yellow, and black color scheme going on as a result. I really, really like the way this turned out with the stickers. Now, much like how Scrounge was a remold of the Generations Cosmos figure, which has also been seen in Titan's Return, Cybax is also related to that in that he is a remold of Cosmos' Target Master Payload, which also came with that particular Generations figure. But yeah, it's basically this Payload in a different color. So going from his little shuttle mode into robot mode is as easy as flipping his wings up like this and standing him up. And again, some really nice detailing via the stickers. Really glad that I picked those up. He can move his arms, and that's pretty much it. But since he is a target master, he can also turn into a weapon for Scrounge. Well, technically anyone can use him, but he's meant to be used with Scrounge. So just flip his arms up. I'm fairly sure flipping his arms up is part of the process. Even if it's not, that's what I usually do. There is a peg in his chest that will come up and actually cover the face up as well to make the grip. And then the legs, there is quite a bit of resistance to it, but they do slide up. You just kind of do it like this, and that will reveal the gun barrels there. And then you can just give him the scrounge, and he's got a gun. Hooray! Well, that's all of the individual figures, but the main reason I got this was because he is a combiner. So I'm going to go ahead and jump cut, and we'll start looking at how to combine things and whatnot. Okay, now before we go on with the combination itself, I do want to show off another kind of accessory that we did have. Technically, we could have given this to Strafe, but this is supposed to be some sort of a gun. I'm not sure how it's meant to be wielded, because it doesn't look very wieldy as a gun. But basically what it really is, even though it's presented to be like some sort of a gun sort of thing, these are the feet and fists. They actually separate thusly. And they're a neat way to store them, I guess. That's all I really ever use them for, so I'm just going to kind of get them out of the way. Now, when it comes to combining a lot of these Transformers combiners, I've noticed that it does make it a bit easy on myself to start from the bottom up. So we're going to do the legs first. And a general rule of thumb when it comes to these Prime Wars Trilogy combiners is that if you want to turn your deluxe class into an arm, it's best to do so from the robot mode. It's easier to do so from the robot mode. And for the legs, it's easier to do so from the vehicle mode. So first off, we're going to start off with the right leg, who is Lightspeed. I already have him in his car mode because, again, it's easier to do so from the vehicle mode. And it's very easy, very, very easy to get him into his leg mode as well. All you got to do is pop up the windshield like we did before. And then the whole front end of the car will fold back like this. Then there's a combiner joint that will rotate up like this. And then you just take your foot part, and then this peg will go into the muffler on the car. And Bob's your uncle. We have a leg. Let's take Nose Cone. He's going to make the left leg. We're going to take the drill off, and then we're basically going to put it like we had before in that hypothetical situation. So it's like this. The turret is going to move up and clip in like that. And then the back section, basically what were the feet on the robot mode, are going to disconnect like this, and then they're going to swing back and up. Hook in like that. And then you take, well actually, then you gotta take out the combiner port, or joint, or whatever you want to call it. Plug. I've seen plug being used. And then just take your foot part, and then the peg goes into the hole on the bottom here. And there's your other leg. Now we're going to bring in Scattershot. Scattershot's going to be the torso. And I already have him partially transformed from his vehicle mode, basically having the spaceship part backpack already in place. And then from here, if we were going into robot mode, we would just move his arms and legs into place. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually orient him this way. We're going to bring the robot arms out and down. We're actually going to ratchet these thusly. Oh. And then bring them around like this. Do the same thing with the other arm. These are going to make the legs, or the upper legs, I should say, of the combination. Then you take your, the fists are going to, or they're on little panels, they're going to swing back like this. Just kind of ratchet into place. And then there's these little panels on the sides that'll come down to make shoulder joints. And then for the head part of it, because I am going to get the head out of the way because it's a pain in the butt otherwise, you can see these little nubs sticking out of the lower chest area. These are the antenna on the head. Just kind of tug at one of those, and this whole panel should come out. And then there's a tab here on the panel that will go into a notch back here. So just swing that up into position, and then lock it in. There's a the panel that was Scattershot's chest that actually has a secondary panel that'll flip up just to kind of fill in that space there. And then these big maroon panels are going to close up the chest area. And they'll just lock into place very nicely. So we've got our torso ready to go. And then the combiner joints will just kind of slide into these spaces for the legs. Very nice. Now our right arm is going to be Afterburner, who we already have in his robot mode. Take the guns out of his arms, or out of his hands, whatever you want to phrase that. Put the legs together, and then the arms. This is kind of an iffy part sometimes, or at least getting it back out of position. We're going to push them down further than they were. They're just kind of going to rest in these little recesses here, but the ratchets are kind of tight, and sometimes the arms can come out of the ball joints, which is fine because they're just ball joints. They can just pop back into place. And bring up the forearms, and then these are going to swing back like this. I like to rotate the head backwards just to make the face less visible, because this is just going to rotate down to bring out the combiner joint there. And then you're going to take the legs, twist them that way, take your right fist, and then the peg is going to go into the hole on the bottom there. And according to the instructions and all of the art and whatnot, you can kind of refinagle this however you want to, but this is basically how the arm is meant to look. Now, I personally go for more of a G1 look in this case, and I just kind of put the wheel back up like this. Also bring in the windshield. Something like that. That actually looks more like it did in the cartoon and on the original toy. And this is just going to drop into the shoulder joint here. There we go. And lastly, for the main combination, we've got Strafe. He's going to make the other arm. Basically lock the legs together before, like we did. Or like we did before, I should say. These wings will flip back. And then the arms are going to fold up and then swing back like before. And then these tabs are kind of going to go into these little slots on the arms. They're not actually going to connect. They're just kind of rest there. Because there really isn't much of a way that they could... I mean, I guess there was a way that they could make it work, but they just didn't do that like that. Then, again, I like to spin his head around just to make sure his face isn't as visible. And then, much like with Afterburner, rotate up the combiner port there. Take the hand, and then that's going to peg in like this. That slides down into the shoulder joint. And while we don't have a dramatic head reveal, I can, at the very least, flip the antenna up. And here we have Computron, the combined form of the Technobots. Actually, before I do that, I like to put the guns into Afterburner's hands just to have a place for them to go. There we go. That's how I usually have him set up. Great. So despite the fact that he is a bit wibbly, especially in the torso area, but you can bring up his arms, and even with Strafe, you can, if you want to, you know, bring it, because these are on ratcheting shoulder joints as well. Sometimes things like to fall apart whenever you move them, because sometimes things don't stay in place very well. I don't like to pose him dramatically, usually, because one of the downsides of these combiners is that things are prone to popping out of place very easily on the figures as they are, and sometimes you know, ratchets can get really stuck a little bit. But if you want a better elbow on Stray if you can. Turn his hand that way. I just kind of like having the wings off to the sides, just so that they're kind of out of the way. Sorry about all the jump cuts here. This is not agreeing with me today. You do likewise have some knee articulation here, so that's kind of nice. You can set them up for those sort of poses if you want to. Overall, he looks great. I like the way he looks a lot. I do know that his head is not very G1 accurate. In fact, he normally has a yellow visor instead of that blue one I gave him to make him more show accurate. He does have a mouthpiece, because this is basically just the Superion head. He does have a mouthpiece there instead of a regular mouth. The Toy Hack stickers that I do have, they do have a mouth sticker to go over that. But even though that isn't accurate the way it's set up, I do like mouth plates on Transformers more than I like mouths on Transformers. So that's just a personal preference of mine. Now we do have another couple of weapon things that we can give him. First off and foremost, the honorary members of these teams in Combiner Wars, they do usually have a secondary weapon function, like Power Glide for the aerial bots turned into a gun. Same thing with Shockwave for the Combaticons. Scrounge will actually combine with Cybax in a way. The guns on Scrounge can actually plug into the boosters on Cybax. And I think that this was sort of also a thing with Cosmos and Payload back on the older figures, but I don't know, I didn't have those. But they make like this sort of shield thing, and this will actually just peg onto the left shoulder, like so. And that's like legitimately part of the combination as far as the instructions are concerned. And I actually like the way that that looks. I don't mind that it's not accurate again, but it looks neat. It definitely gives it some shoulder height to, at the very least, if you have it set up like this, match the Afterburner arm. Now, like I said before, Scattershot does come with this sort of shield gun thing, and this rifle that can combine into a longer rifle that Computron can wield. I don't think that he actually had anything like this in the show. This is, again, just kind of a leftover from it being the Silverbolt mold, and this is more along the lines of the rifle that Superion uses, but it's still really cool, and he can still hold on to it. The only question that really pops up in situations like these is, the only part that wouldn't be used in this particular case is Lightspeed's little shotgun here. Now, what I used to do, just to kind of have a place for it to go in the combined mode, there is a little hole in the side that you can peg it into, but after a while I decided I didn't really like it that way. But what you can do is that there's this little hole on the top of the shield, and you can actually peg the gun into that to make it a little bit more of an elaborate combined gun. So that's what I usually do now. Then Computron can hold that, and he's got a cool, big Buster gun. Yes. Anyway, as you could probably tell by the way I'm just reacting to everything, yes, it does have its flaws here and there. There are a lot of bits that don't like to stay in place sometimes, especially if you move it around as a whole. But as a set and as a combiner, I love Computron. As I said before, the Technobots and Computron are like my favorite combiner team from G1, and I'm really, really glad I picked this up. I got it off of Amazon some months ago. The retail price for him at the time was about $100, which in and of itself is a good price for what you're getting here. Even if you don't consider the fact that it's one big robot, you're getting a Voyager class figure, 4 Deluxe class figures, and a Legends class figure, and even a little Target Master friend. That's 7 figures of varying normal price points for only $100, and that is not bad. When I picked him up, he was on sale for 10% off. Plus, I didn't have to pay any extra shipping because I'm a Prime member. So I got him for $90, and $90 is an even better price for this guy. I'm really glad I picked him up. And if you do pick him up, again, I do highly suggest also picking up the ToyHacks.com repro labels, because they just make him look that much better. I know I didn't really point them out in detail, other than here and there, like on Cybax and whatnot. but they do look really, really good. And they definitely enhance the way that he looks. Okay, so that was Computron. I'm really glad I finally got a chance to review him and show him off, because I really like this figure. Probably one of my favorites in my collection. If all goes well, next week's episode will be Punch Counter Punch, if Amazon can get off their duffs and actually ship the darn thing to me. Otherwise, we'll probably be looking at another combiner. So, until then, I've been Rado Goji, and I'll be here next time. Join me, won't you?